Commander Zara Chen had been waiting for this moment for exactly 3 months, 2 weeks, and 4 days. Not that she was counting or anything. Oh, who was she kidding? She'd been counting every single second since that pompous, blue-skinned jackass had made his little comment about primitive Deathworlders during orientation. The Galactic Combat Academy sparring hall buzzed with nervous energy. Dozens of species from across the galaxy gathered on the polished metal floor, their various forms of breathing apparatus hissing and clicking in a symphony of alien anxiety. Zara stood in the corner, methodically wrapping her hands while watching the other cadets size each other up like predators at a watering hole. "Look at them," she muttered to herself, her voice carrying just enough volume to make the nearby Vorthan cadets' tentacles twitch nervously. All scales, claws, and cybernetic enhancements, and they're still terrified of a little human girl. The truth was, Zara Chen was not particularly little. At 6 feet tall with shoulders that could have been carved from granite, she possessed the kind of build that made smart people cross to the other side of the corridor. Her black hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, but rebellious strands had already escaped to frame her angular face. Her dark eyes held the kind of cold fire that suggested she'd seen things that would make most beings wet themselves. She had, growing up on Earth during the resource wars, tended to do that to a person. "Attention, cadets!" The voice boomed across the sparring hall, causing several of the more delicate species to flinch. Instructor Kelver strode into the center of the room, his forearms gesturing dramatically. The Zirian was built like a walking tank, with natural armor plating that gleamed under the artificial lights. "Today we practice advanced combat techniques. You will be randomly paired for sparring matches." Random. Zara's lips curved into what might charitably be called a smile. She'd been manipulating the Academy's supposedly random pairing system for weeks, using skills she'd picked up during her stint with Earth's Intelligence Division. Today, everything would fall into place. "First match," Kelver announced, consulting his datapad. "Cadet Thorne versus Cadet Chen." "Perfect." Dex Thorne stepped forward from the crowd, his blue skin shimmering with confidence. The Zephyrian stood nearly 7 feet tall, with the kind of lean, elegant build that suggested he'd never done a day of hard labor in his privileged life. His silver hair was styled in the latest Galactic fashion, and his clothing was clearly expensive, probably worth more than most beings made in a year. Well, Thorne said, his voice carrying the cultured accent of the core worlds. "The little Deathworlder wants to play." Zara's hand stilled on her wraps. "Little? Oh, forgive me," Thorne continued, clearly enjoying himself. "I meant the adorable Deathworlder. How precious that they're letting pets participate in real combat training." The sparring hall fell silent. Even the automatic air recyclers seemed to hold their breath. Zara finished wrapping her hands with deliberate care, each movement precise and controlled. "You know, Thorne," she said conversationally, "I've been looking forward to this for quite some time." "Have you now?" He began his own preparations, activating the energy shields built into his forearm guards. Standard Zephyrian combat gear, designed to deflect both energy weapons and physical attacks. "I do hope you won't cry when this is over. It would be terribly embarrassing for your primitive species." Zara stepped into the designated sparring circle, her movements fluid and economical. "Oh, I don't think crying will be necessary." The crowd pressed closer, sensing blood in the water, literally, in some cases. The sanguine cadets had already begun secreting their feeding preparation enzymes. Combat parameters established, the automated system announced. Non-lethal engagement, victory conditions, submission, unconsciousness, or yield. Medical drones standing by. Thorne activated his shields with theatrical flourish. Blue energy crackled along his forearms, and he adopted a classical Zephyrian fighting stance. All flowing movements and elegant positioning, designed to showcase the superior grace of his species. "I'll try to be gentle," he said. "Wouldn't want to damage you too badly." Zara rolled her shoulders, loosening up. "That's very considerate of you." "Begin," Kelver commanded. Thor moved first, as Zara had known he would. Zephyrians were creatures of pride and showmanship. He came in fast, shield first, intending to knock her down and end the fight quickly. A statement victory to put the uppity human in her place. Zara let him come. At the last second, she sidestepped with fluid grace, her hand shooting out to tap his extended arm. To the observers, it looked like she'd barely touched him. Thorne stumbled past, his momentum carrying him forward, and spun around with confused expression. What was that supposed to be? He demanded. Some kind of primitive finger poke technique? Zara examined her fingernails with apparent interest. Oh, that? Just checking something. The second attack came faster, more aggressive. Thorne was clearly annoyed at being made to look foolish. He launched into a complex series of strikes, his energy shields leaving trails of blue light in the air. Fast, powerful, technically perfect, and completely predictable. Zara moved like water, flowing around his attacks without apparent effort. She didn't counterattack, didn't even seem to be trying, just dancing out of the way, while Thorne grew increasingly frustrated. Stand still and fight, he snarled. I am fighting, Zara replied calmly. You're just not very good at it. That did it. Thorne's careful technique abandoned him in favor of raw aggression. He lunged forward, both shield-wrapped arms extended, going for a grab that would let him use his size and strength advantage. His right hand closed around Zara's throat. The sparring hall erupted in shocked gasps and angry chittering. Throat holds were explicitly forbidden in training matches, a rule that existed specifically to prevent exactly this kind of incident. Release! Kelver roared, but was too late. Thorne had made his choice. Now Zara would make hers. Time seemed to slow as she looked into his eyes, seeing the smug satisfaction there. The assumption that he'd won, that the primitive human would submit or pass out from his grip, the casual contempt of someone who'd never faced real consequences for his actions. You know, Zara said conversationally, her voice barely affected by the hand around her throat. On Earth, we have a saying. Thorne's grip tightened. What saying? Zara's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Don't start none, won't be none. Her left hand moved with surgical precision, fingers finding the exact pressure point on his wrist. Thorne's grip loosened involuntarily as nerve clusters sent conflicting signals to his brain. At the same moment, her right hand came up in a short, sharp strike that looked almost gentle. It wasn't. The sound was like a branch breaking in a thunderstorm. Thorne's collarbone snapped cleanly, the bone separating with a wet crack that echoed through the suddenly silent hall. Thorne's scream could probably be heard in the next star system. He released her throat and stumbled backward, his left arm hanging at an unnatural angle. His face had gone from confident blue to a sick shade of purple, and tears streamed down his cheeks. Medical assistance required. The automated system announced with mechanical calm, dispatching emergency drones. Zara stood perfectly still, watching as the medical drones swarmed around Thorne. Her expression was serene, almost peaceful, like someone who just completed a particularly satisfying puzzle. Cadet Chun, Kelver thundered, his forearms bristling with indignation. Explain yourself. She turned to face him, her dark eyes completely calm. He grabbed my throat, sir. That a violation of combat protocols, and, more importantly, a threatening gesture against a member of a Deathworld species. That doesn't justify breaking his collarbone. Zara tilted her head slightly. According to Galactic Combat Regulation 15.7, subsection C, any cadet who initiates unauthorized lethal contact during a training exercise forfeits protection under non-lethal engagement rules. The hall fell silent, except for Thorne's continued whimpering. Furthermore, Zara continued, Earth's formal application to the Academy specifically noted that humans possess enhanced threat response reflexes due to our Deathworld evolution. All cadets were required to review this documentation before the start term. Kelver's mandibles clicked in frustration. You're saying this was self-defense? I'm saying he put his hands on my throat during a non-lethal sparring match, Zara replied. What happened next was just physics. One of the medical drones finished its scan and announced its findings to the room. Subject has sustained a clean fracture of the left clavicle. Bone separation is precise, with minimal surrounding tissue damage. Estimated healing time, 6 to 8 weeks with proper treatment. Precise? Kelver's voice carried a note of professional curiosity, despite his anger. The drone sensors focused on Zara. Analysis suggests the injury was caused by a targeted strike to a specific anatomical weak point. The force applied was exactly sufficient to cause the observed damage, with no excess energy transfer. In other words, she hit him exactly hard enough to break his collarbone, and not one bit harder. "That's impossible," one of the other cadets whispered. "No one has that kind of control." Zara finally turned to address the crowd. "You're right. Most people don't." The implication hung in the air like a challenge. She wasn't most people. Thorne was still being attended to by the medical drones, but his sobbing had quieted to mere sniffling. The pain medications were kicking in, but his pride would take much longer to heal. "This matter will be reviewed by the Academy Board," Kelver announced. "Cadet Chen, you're confined to quarters pending investigation." "Understood, sir." As she walked toward the exit, the crowd of alien cadets parted before her like water. Some stared in fascination, others in fear, and a few with something that might have been respect. Just before she reached the door, Thorne's voice called out behind her, thick with pain medication and wounded pride. "This isn't over, human." Zara paused at the threshold and looked back over her shoulder. Her smile was cold and sharp and promised terrible things. "You're right," she said. "It's not." 2 weeks later, Zara Chen sat in her quarters, methodically cleaning her combat boots while waiting for the inevitable knock on her door. The Academy Board had concluded their investigation with predictable results. Insufficient evidence to prove deliberate assault, but a formal reprimand for excessive force during training exercises. She'd been expecting something else entirely. The soft chime of her door communicator interrupted her thoughts. "Cadet Chen, you have a visitor. Send them in." The door slid open to reveal someone she definitely hadn't been expecting. Admiral Sarah Voss, commander of the Terran Defense Force and the most decorated human officer in galactic history. Her steel gray hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her uniform was crisp enough to cut diamonds. "Admiral." Zara shot to her feet, snapping to attention. "At ease, cadet." Voss entered the room, her sharp eyes taking in every detail. "Close the door." Zara complied, her mind racing. Admiral Voss didn't make social calls to Academy cadets. If she was here, something significant was happening. "I read the incident report," Voss said without preamble. "Interesting reading." "Ma'am." "Sit down, Chun. We need to talk." They settled into the small seating area. Two women from the same violent world, separated by rank and experience, but united by something deeper. "Tell me about Dex Thorne," Voss said. Zara kept her expression neutral. "What would you like to know, ma'am?" "Everything, starting with why you've been planning to hurt him for months." There was no point in denying it. Admiral Voss hadn't achieved her position by being stupid or easily fooled. "He's been making comments about humans since orientation," Zara said. "Deathworlder jokes, primitive species remarks, the usual xenophobic garbage from core world elites." "And that bothered you enough to manipulate the sparring system?" "The manipulation was just to ensure we'd face each other eventually. The rest was his choice." Voss leaned back in her chair, studying Zara with predatory interest. "You know what I think happened in that sparring hall?" "I imagine you're going to tell me." "I think you let him grab your throat. I think you wanted him to cross that line, so you'd have justification for what came next." Zara met her gaze without flinching. "And what did come next?" "You delivered a precision strike designed to cause maximum psychological impact while staying within the technical bounds of legal self-defense. You broke his collarbone in exactly the right way to ensure he'd never forget the lesson, but not badly enough to end his career. That's a very specific analysis, ma'am." "It should be. I've seen that technique before." Voss pulled out a datapad and activated it. "Earth Intelligence Division, Psychological Operations Unit. They teach that particular move to agents who need to send messages without starting wars." Zara's blood went cold. "Ma'am, I'm not sure what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts." Voss leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Agent Zara Chen, recruitment code Nightingale, served with distinction in the Centauri conflict before transferring to Academy training undercover identity. The question is, why?" The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Finally, Zara spoke. How long have you known? Since the day you arrived. Did you really think intelligence would send someone undercover to the academy without informing me? Then why the charade? Voss smiled, and it was nothing like the cold expression Zara had perfected. This was warm, almost maternal. Because sometimes the best way to learn about someone is to watch them when they think they're alone. And what did you learn? That you're exactly what we need for the next phase of human integration into galactic society. Zara frowned, which is... Instead of answering directly, Voss activated her datapad again. A holographic display materialized between them, showing star charts and tactical assessments. 3 weeks ago, long-range sensors detected something troubling. A fleet of unknown vessels, moving to the outer rim territories with technology that doesn't match any known civilization. Pirates. We thought so initially, but the attack patterns are too sophisticated, too coordinated. Someone is testing our defenses, probing for weaknesses. The display shifted, showing battle damage reports and casualty figures. They hit a mining station in the Kepler system. No survivors, but the station's black box recorded some interesting data before they were destroyed. What kind of data? Communication intercepts. The attackers were discussing humans specifically, our combat capabilities, our psychological profiles, our integration into the galactic community. Zara F. felt something cold settle in her stomach. They're targeting us. More than that, they're studying us, which means they're planning something bigger than random raids. What does this have to do with me in the academy? Voss deactivated the display and fixed Zara with a steady stare. The academy isn't just about training officers. It's about building relationships, establishing trust, creating the bonds that hold the galactic community together. And I just broke a cadet's collarbone. You defended yourself against an unprovoked attack, demonstrated superior combat skills, and sent a clear message about human capabilities. The reaction among the other cadets has been illuminating. Zara thought back to the past 2 weeks. The way conversations stopped when she entered a room. The respectful distance maintained by even the larger, more physically imposing species. The subtle nods of acknowledgement from cadets who'd previously ignored her. They're afraid of me. Some are. Others are impressed. A few are both. Voss stood, pacing to the small window that looked out over the academy grounds. Fear and respect are useful tools, but they're not enough. We need allies. What are you asking me to do? Your mission parameters have changed. You're no longer just gathering intelligence on academy operations. You're now tasked with building a network of non-human contacts who can serve as early warning systems for threats against Earth. And how exactly am I supposed to do that after breaking someone's collarbone? Voss turned back to her, and her smile was sharp as a blade. By being exactly who you are. A dangerous human who chooses to be reasonable. Over the next few days, Zara began to understand what the Admiral had meant. The incident with Thorne had created a strange dynamic among the cadet population. Species that had previously dismissed humans as weak or primitive now treated her with wary respect. Others, particularly those from societies that valued martial prowess, seemed almost eager to test themselves against her. It was a third group that proved most interesting. The cadets who approached her with genuine curiosity about human combat techniques and cultural practices. Your species is fascinating, said Kex, a young Vorthan whose tentacles had stopped twitching nervously around her. The precision of your attack suggests extensive training, but the psychological impact was equally calculated. They were sitting in the academy's common area, surrounded by the low hum of conversation in a dozen different languages. Zara had been working on a tactical analysis assignment when Kex had approached. We're taught be efficient, Zara replied. Why use more force than necessary? But the choice of injury was specific. A broken collarbone is painful, but not permanently debilitating. It sends a message without ending his career. You've given this a lot of thought. Kex's tentacles performed what Zara had learned was the Vorthan equivalent of a shrug. My people are natural analysts. We observe patterns, seek understanding. And what pattern do you see here? A species that fights with both physical and psychological weapons. Your attack on Thorne wasn't just about defending yourself. It was about establishing your position in the social hierarchy. Zara sipped her coffee, considering her response. And how do you feel about that? Impressed and somewhat concerned. Concerned? Humans are new to galactic society. Most species go through centuries of cultural integration before achieving the kind of strategic thinking you demonstrated. Either your species is naturally gifted at social manipulation, or what? Or you've been preparing for this integration much longer than anyone realizes. It was a perceptive observation, and a dangerous one. Zara made a mental note to include Kex in her intelligence reports. What would you do, she asked carefully, if you discovered that humans were more prepared than expected? Kex's tentacles stilled completely, a sign of intense concentration. I would want to understand why, and I would want to ensure that preparation was directed toward mutual benefit rather than dominance. That's a very diplomatic answer. I'm studying to be a diplomatic attaché. Diplomacy is about finding common ground between different perspectives. And what common ground do you see between humans and other species? Survival, Kex said without hesitation. The galaxy is a dangerous place. Species that can't adapt or defend themselves don't last long. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the entrance to the common area. Dex Thorne had entered, his left arm still supported by a medical brace, but his expression full of renewed confidence. He wasn't alone. 3 other cadets flanked him. Rex Vorn, a massive Krogan whose species was known for their love of violence. Zeta Prime, a cybernetically enhanced Nexus whose neural implants glowed with hostile intent. And Jixhail, a serpentine whose reputation for political manipulation was legendary even among Academy cadets. They were moving with purpose, and that purpose was clearly focused on Zara. Well, she murmured to Kex, this should be interesting. Thorne stopped at their table. His 3 companions arrayed themselves in a loose semicircle. The common area gradually fell silent as other cadets sensed attention. Chun, Thorne said, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden quiet. We need to talk. Zara looked up from her datapad with apparent indifference. Do we? You embarrass me in front of the entire Academy. You embarrass yourself. I just provided the soundtrack. Rex Vorn growled, a sound like grinding stone. Show some respect, human. For what? His fashion sense. Thorne's face darkened. I'm challenging you to a formal duel. Full contact, no restrictions. The common area exploded in shocked whispers. Formal duels were rare at the Academy, reserved for matters of serious honor or irreconcilable differences. They were also potentially lethal. Zara set down her coffee cup with deliberate care. That's a very serious escalation, Thorne. You broke my collarbone. You grabbed my throat. And now I'm going to break more than your collarbone. Zara stood slowly, her movements precise and controlled. The entire common area held its breath. Formal challenge accepted, she said clearly. When and where? Thorne's smile was triumphant. Tomorrow night, Combat Arena 7. Witnesses will be provided. I'll be there. As Thorne and his companions walked away, Kex's tentacles writhed with anxiety. Are you insane? Thorne is angry and humiliated. He'll be fighting to seriously hurt you. Zara watched the group leave, her expression thoughtful. I'm counting on it. What? Nothing brings people together like a common enemy, and nothing demonstrates capability like overwhelming victory. You're planning something. I'm planning to give these cadets a demonstration of what humans are really capable of. After tomorrow night, there won't be any more questions about whether we belong in galactic society. Kex's tentacles stilled again. You're going to hurt him badly, aren't you? Zara's smile was cold and sharp and promised terrible things. I'm going to end this conversation permanently. The next evening, Combat Arena 7 was packed beyond capacity. Word had spread throughout the Academy, and cadets from every species had gathered to witness what many were calling the most significant interspecies conflict since the Academy's founding. Zara entered the arena to a mixture of cheers and nervous silence. She wore simple black combat fatigues and carried no weapons or defensive equipment. Her hands were wrapped, but otherwise she appeared completely unprepared for formal combat. Thorne entered from the opposite side, and the difference was immediately apparent. He wore full Zephyrian battle armor, complete with energy shields, kinetic dampeners, and neural interface enhancement. His 3 allies had clearly provided him with the best defensive technology available. Combat parameters established. The automated system announced. Formal duel. Victory conditions. Death, permanent incapacitation, or yield. Medical intervention authorized only after victory is declared. The crowd fell silent. This is your last chance to back down, human. Thorne called across the arena. I'm going to enjoy breaking every bone in your primitive body. Zara cracked her knuckles. You know what the problem is with fancy equipment, Thorne? What? It makes you overconfident. Begin. Thorne charged immediately, his armor systems fully active. He moved faster than should have been possible, his enhanced reflexes and powered assistance turning him into a blur of lethal intent. Zara waited until he was 3 steps away, then moved. What happened next would be discussed in Academy tactical classes for decades to come. Zara didn't dodge Thorne's attack so much as she redirected it, using his own momentum and the weight of his armor against him. Her first strike disabled his left knee joint, a precision hit that turned his expensive armor into a liability. Her second strike found a weak point in his chest plate, a manufacturing flaw that no one should have been able to identify in combat. Her third strike ended the fight. Thorne's helmet went flying, his neural interfaces sparking as they overloaded. He hit the arena floor hard and didn't get up. The medical scanners immediately activated. Subject unconscious. No permanent damage detected. Victory! Cadet Chen. The arena erupted in chaos. Some cadets cheered. Others sat in stunned silence, and a few were already heading for the exits to file reports with their respective governments. Zara stood over Thorne's unconscious form, completely uninjured and barely breathing hard. She looked up at the crowd of alien faces, reading the mixture of fear, respect, and calculation in their expressions. Any other questions about human capabilities? She asked calmly. There weren't. Later that evening, Admiral Voss found Zara in her quarters, once again cleaning her boots. I watched the recording. Voss said without preamble, Impressive work. Thank you, ma'am. The response has been significant. We've received 17 formal requests for human military advisors, 23 applications for culture exchange programs, and at least 6 marriage proposals. Zara looked up in surprise. Marriage proposals? Apparently, some species find competence highly attractive. Voss settled into the chair across from her. More importantly, we've also received intelligence from 3 different sources about unusual fleet movements in the Outer Rim. The unknown attackers? Our new allies are sharing information they would never have provided before tonight's demonstration. It seems that respect opens doors that diplomacy alone cannot. So the mission was successful? Beyond our expectations. You've positioned humanity as a species to be taken seriously, while also demonstrating that we can be reasonable partners. Zara resumed cleaning her boots. What happens now? Now you finish your academy training, build on the relationships you've established, and prepare for whatever's coming from the Outer Rim. Any idea what that might be? Admiral Voss was quiet for a long moment. Something that has the established galactic powers worried enough to ally with a species they previously considered primitive. That's not comforting. It's not meant to be. But whatever's coming, they'll have to deal with humans now. And thanks to your little demonstration, they know exactly what that means. As Admiral Voss left, Zara continued her methodical boot cleaning. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove human worth in galactic society. But tonight, she allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Dex Thorne had learned not to grab Deathworlders by the throat. The rest of the galaxy was beginning to learn that humans were far more dangerous than they appeared. And in the darkness between the stars, unknown ships continued their patient approach toward the heart of galactic civilization, unaware that they would soon face a species that had been preparing for this moment far longer than anyone realized. The galaxy was about to discover what humans were really capable of. It was going to be educational.